Ask any watch nerd what the best affordable dive watch is, and you'll hear the same answer over and over: the Casio MDV-106, aka the Duro. Since its release back in 2011, this one watch has dominated the entire sub $100 price bracket to the extent that it's widely considered the go-to default choice for those looking for a watch on a budget, with other dive-style options effectively being rendered obsolete in the process. Heck, one commenter even suggested that the best Casio Duro alternative was actually to buy a second Casio Duro. Together with its near-identical brother, the MDV-107, the Duro offers a key combination of strengths. It's got a nicely finished stainless steel case, it comes from a well-respected brand, it looks pretty good, it's got a whopping 200-meter water resistance rating with a threaded crown, screwed rear and ratcheting bezel, the design itself isn't a direct copy and paste of an existing luxury watch, and perhaps most importantly, it's priced very, very low. Currently, you can grab this juggernaut for about £80 direct from the Casio site, or just over 50 quid on grey market sites like Amazon. In the USA, you can buy this for even less. With those features and that sort of cost, it's not hard to see why this watch has gained a cult following, nor why it's so hard to beat. But I can't help but speculate. 2011, that was quite a while ago, right? I mean, the watch market has changed enormously since then, yet the Duro is still seemingly on top. Surely by now, something has come along that can at least challenge the thing, or heck, is there a little-known brand out there that might even be able to beat it? To find the answers to those questions, I started with my favourite research method: cheating. Yeah, I just asked you guys for your best suggestions, I can't help it. From your comments, I compiled a shortlist of the most promising, widely available watches and combined them with several other compelling options I found online to form our field of steel-clad competitors. Specifically, I sought out watches that weren't just carbon copies of existing luxury watches, which is what the vast majority of typical Duro alternatives have always been. While vanilla, the Duro has always had that going for it, so I wanted to try and match or beat that too. So, no Invicta Pro divers or Addies dives in this comparison. What we do have are some more obscure Chinese watches, some little-known big brand watches, and even a couple of extra Casio watches, just to spice things up. Today, we're going to rate them all and find out if any can beat the legendary Casio Duro. And believe me, we're going the whole hog with this. At the end of the video, we're even going to be lobbing each of these into a pressurized test chamber to see if any brands lied about their water resistance claims. Will any of them crack under the pressure? Stay tuned to find out. All these watches are linked below if you're interested. Those affiliate links are the only way I can afford to do this, well, except for the generosity of our sponsor, IFL Watches. IFL collaborates with brands to painstakingly create custom limited edition pieces that are truly unique and special. Every dial is hand-painted, so even within this limited batch, each will be slightly different from the rest and completely exclusive to the owner. As you can see, the detailing on these watches is really impressive, even on a super macro level. The whole experience is like wearing a little piece of art on your wrist. In fact, this latest collab with Italian brand Venezianico, the Venus, is directly inspired by the famous painting The Birth of Venus by Botticelli. This intricate design is brought to life on the foundation of Venezianico's popular and super slim 40mm Arsenale, boasting excellent finishing and all the bells and whistles. This custom release is available for 72 hours only, from August the 4th at 4 PM CEST until August the 7th, exclusively on iflwatches.com. Previous drops have sold out basically instantly, so if you're interested in grabbing one, head to the link below before it's too late. They've already done great things with some of the most popular affordable watches from the likes of Seiko and Citizen, so yeah, definitely keep your eyes on them. Thanks to IFL Watches for sponsoring this video. Sadly, 3 of my most highly anticipated candidates immediately left me feeling disappointed. These were all from Lorus, a subsidiary of Seiko, and a brand at least one of you suggested I try. I had high hopes for these too, given how good some of their super cheap field watches are. Alas, their dive style pieces fall well short of the competition. On paper, they're all reasonable with steel cases, fair 10-bar water resistance ratings, and a variety of different movements. I grabbed myself a quartz, an automatic, and even a solar quartz so I could test one of each. These vary from about £40 for the quartz to 70-ish for the automatic on Amazon, so well within the Duro's price range too. But they've all got some pretty major shortcomings. Firstly, they each have fixed or fake thick bezels, which feels like a major downgrade from the fully functional bezel on the Duro. They also all lack screw-down crowns and only boast half the water resistance, which isn't ideal. If the rest of the package was elite, I could overlook that, but something I can't overlook is how cheap these watches look in the flesh. Now, the bezels already look overly shiny, which doesn't help, but I think the hour markers are what really degrade the appearance. If you look closely, these are punched through from the rear, unlike the applied markers on the Duro, which makes them look way worse, even from a distance. Personally, I'd take just plain inks markers over these. Also, the designs in general are pretty bland and don't improve on the Duro in that regard either. The standard and solar quartz both get like 2 stars from me, despite boasting thin cases and added solar functionality respectively. The automatic model is the best of this trio with slightly improved looks and a nicer strap. The movement, if you're wondering, is the same basic 7S26 used in lots of the old pre-2019 Seiko 5 models. On that note, I've heard many people say these automatic Lorus watches are essentially like the old better value Seiko 5s from days past. Personally, I'm not entirely convinced. Would I take this one over the Duro? Still no. 3 out of 5 stars from me. One brand you may have expected to see here is Timex. For years, they've butted heads with Casio in the lower price bracket, so surely they've got a viable diver. Well, the most obvious choice that isn't brass-cased is the Waterbury Compressor diver. This good-looking dual-crown model provides you with a different vibe and layout to the Duro, and I'd say is arguably more attractive at a glance, especially considering it's substantially sleeker and has an even better finished case. Sadly, this one has one major and 2 minor points of failure that also rule it out of contention. The major one is the inner rotating bezel. It started out okay, but has quickly developed a fault where you can no longer screw in the upper crown without the bezel inadvertently shifting anti-clockwise, preventing you from ever achieving perfect alignment. To me, that's an absolute deal breaker. It also sounds extremely grindy during use. Yes, something must be broken here. This sound is not typical and developed after just 2 uses of the bezel for this video. No joke. 2 uses. So yeah, this Timex may still be ticking, but it certainly can't take a licking. As you can probably guess, I won't be water testing this one. It's going to be going back for a refund. The other issues, by the way, were the markers and hands, which again just look much cheaper than the Duro, as well as the strap, which is completely impractical and borderline unusable. It doesn't have a typical tang buckle arrangement and instead has a notch on the underside, which you're supposed to slot into the holes from above. While this doesn't look dissimilar from Timex's newer tuck-away straps, which are actually very good, in practice this notched alternative is comically difficult to use. As you can see, it's near impossible to tuck away the excess, and then if you try tucking first, good luck seating that notch properly. It's like Timex were trying to fix a problem that just didn't exist in the first place. That other diver, by the way, the Deepwater Reef, is actually significantly better than the Duro, but it's much more expensive, so it wasn't a good fit for this video. Overall, 2 stars for the Waterbury, 3 if it wasn't faulty. Luckily, from this point on, there's a clear jump in competitiveness. Indeed, they're all pretty viable with no fatal flaws. And in fact, I think there are 3 here that may make the old Duro sweat a little. Why don't we start close to home? Here are Casio's 2 closest competitors to the Duro, the MTP S110 and the MTD 1053D. Now, I've covered both of these before on Ben's Watch Club, but here's a quick rundown of how they stack up. The MTP S110 is a solar-powered dive-style watch that effectively trades water resistance for that solar-powered movement. For the most part, it's pretty similar to the Duro with a steel case, the same mineral crystal, and even comparable sizing. The strap is also the same, and if anything, the S110 is even thinner. The primary drawbacks are the fixed bezel and standard push-pull crown. It's about as detailed as the old MDV 106, and the visuals are kind of up for debate. It's a fair choice, though it tends to cost a little more than the Duro in most territories, and I'm not sure I'd take it over the old Casio, especially with the segmented case shape. It's like a 3, maybe 3.5 star watch. The MTD 1053D is in a similar ballpark. It's a more direct competitor to the Duro, with a matching water resistance rating, a ratcheting bezel, and a price tag that in some regions is even lower. Another advantage is in the size department. The Duro's 44mm profile has always been heavily limiting for those without big wrists. The MTD 1053 alleviates this somewhat, coming in at about 40.5mm across, despite what the listings tell you, with a sub 40mm bezel. Paired with a 48mm lug-to-lug, this Casio is smaller than the famous one in every way. Yet, it's not a perfect replacement. The bezel does ratchet, but feels much tinnier and only has 90 clicks compared to the Duro's 120. The staggered looking edging on the bezel is also unconventional. Aside from that, the watch is reasonably aesthetic, but the case isn't as stylish, and the dial design is verging on a Blancpain homage territory, which isn't really my goal with this video. Still, I'd give it 3.5 stars. If you can ever get it on a strap instead, I'd probably go down that route, as the custom fit stock bracelet still has basic construction with a mediocre clasp to boot. I no longer have these two Casios on hand for the lume tests, but from memory they were basically the same as the Duro. But to be honest, when I was concocting this whole video, it wasn't really the bigger heritage brands that had me so excited. You see, the best bargains I've discovered over the last few years have typically been from Singaporean and Chinese brands who've been offering more and more for less and less money. One such brand is Ratio Watches from well-known Singaporean retailer Creation Watches. This is the Freediver Professional 22 AD202. At present, it retails for just under £70, so in some countries may actually be cheaper than the Duro. Mine escaped with no customs fees, by the way, which certainly helps. I'd say this is the first notable competitor on this list. It's still quartz, but visually, its approach is very different from the Duro, with a skinny, almost pancake-like profile that wears much flatter to the arm. Visually, the watch also looks much more compact due to the smaller bezel and dial, though at its widest point, it is still up there at 43.5mm. That's despite the reduced thickness and lug-to-lug length. Unlike some of the previous options, this ratio matches the Casio's aquatic prowess with the full water resistance and screw-down appendages. For the most part, spec-wise, this one still edges the Duro out, with a much more resistant sapphire crystal for starters. Now, many cheap sapphire crystals are prone to severe haziness, which can impede their legibility and appearance. Perhaps it's just the high contrast design, I'm not sure, but in most scenarios this ratio is just as legible as the Casio. In fact, in low light, this thing trounces the Duro with significantly brighter and longer lasting luminescence. Some of that could be because the whole dial is inked or painted, which is one trade-off you make with this model. As I said before, I'd always take these painted markers over poorly done rear punched markers, and these visually still look fine to me. I mean, the old Seiko SKX was very loved, and that had markers really similar to this. Still, the applied markers on the Casio do look more premium at a glance, as does the sunburst dial, which the ratio completely lacks. I actually quite like the bezel, despite it only being 60 click. The steel silver finish looks cool, and it feels far grippier than the Duro as well, with a more satisfying sound. The ratio just has a brushed finish across the case, so it's far from the most complex, but I think it gets the job done. This Freediver certainly has some Citizen ProMaster vibes about it, with that handset and the unusual markers. I can only wish Citizen were released a watch at this price point. For me, the ratio branding is reasonable, and another minor benefit is the packaging too, which is also much more giftable than what the Duro ships in. Powering this one is the Seiko VX42E movement, which is another quartz. For comparison, the Duro uses the Miyota 2115. Both have near identical specs and track records, so I wouldn't say either has a clear edge. The bands are also very similar, with the ratio perhaps edging it a bit. Overall, I think this Freediver is a really solid watch, at least 4 stars, maybe 4.5 for the money. If the water test goes okay, this could be a genuine Duro alternative for those after some functional upgrades, especially in territories where the price is closer. On that subject, I couldn't help but pull the trigger on 2 super cheap divers from Chinese site AliExpress, which promised even higher specs for less money than the Duro. The first of these is Keaso. Now, I've tried many AliExpress brands over the years, but I'd never heard of Keaso until researching for this video. This one cost me a mere £46, including UK import fees, which is less than the Duro even on grey market sites. What's more, it arrived in surprisingly stylish iPhone-like packaging, which I definitely wasn't expecting at this price. You're usually lucky to get a plastic bag. Something else I wasn't expecting was the sheer quality of the thing. I mean, the water performance remains to be seen. Maybe it's all show and no go, but on the surface, the case finishing matches or even exceeds the Duro. The bezel is straight up better, with a tighter action, more grip and a ceramic insert, and even the bracelet is excellent, with solid links and a micro-adjustable clasp. This was the last watch I decided to add in for this video, and I'm glad I didn't skip it. Now, the bracelet did cause me some confusion. When adjusting it, I figured I'd try using the included link removal tool, and at first, I thought I was dealing with a tolerance problem, as the pins simply wouldn't budge. Only then did I discover that this bracelet actually uses screw links. So yeah, they give you a link removal tool that's incompatible with the watch it ships with. I can't complain too much, as I guess you could use it for other watches, and many watches just don't ship with tools full stop. But even so, it did give me a chuckle. I'm sure some poor souls have wasted countless hours trying to pop these links out to no avail. In general though, screw links are amazing at this price and are generally the easiest and best type to resize. Just be aware that you'll need a really small screwdriver to change them and you'll be good to go. As for quality, this band blitzes the Duro's bracelet options, it's not even close. Another area where it blitzes the Duro is luminescence. It's much brighter, not quite as bright as the Ratio, but still a marked step up. I must say the lume is applied incredibly neatly too for such a cheap watch. I mean, look at this. It certainly makes the watch look much more premium than it probably should. Now again, this one isn't perfect, as you might expect. For starters, the design is probably the least original in this video. That's because, while it's not a direct one-to-one copy of an existing watch, it is very similar to the Momentum C Quartz, with some slight reworks and changes. I don't think the end result is ugly by any stretch, but how much designing actually happened here is certainly up for debate. In addition to the slightly smaller 41.8mm case, which is likely more versatile, it also offers a sapphire crystal, albeit one with an anti-reflective coating whose blue glare is maybe more distracting than it is effective. Also, the date wheel is sat hovering alone in this awkward spot, suggesting the size of the movement isn't perfect for the watch. In here, by the way, is supposedly the Langda 507. Just like with this watch brand, I've never heard of this movement or its manufacturer before. I'm assuming this is some sort of Ronda 507 clone, but I won't pop it open until after the water resistance test just to keep things fair. They again claim a full 200 meters here with a screw-down crown and case back. Overall though, pretty good first impressions with this one. Both this and the Ratio had great second-hand alignment by the way as well, and they were each very quiet. Another 4-star watch, at least for now. The next bargain bucket option is a little more bizarre. Meet the Triton from North Edge Watches. From above, this one doesn't look all that much bigger than the Duro, but from the side, well, it's an elephant. Yeah, this thing is pretty girthy, likely for one of two reasons. Number one, the water resistance. This watch claims the highest water resistance in today's video at 300 meters. And number two, the unusual movement residing under the hood. Indeed, this is another solar quartz watch, which could be seen as another functional advantage over the Duro, which uses just a standard quartz. Now, the exact identity of this module very much remains a mystery until I pop it open after the water resistance test. It's not named anywhere, leading me to believe it's some obscure Chinese movement, especially considering the ridiculous mass of this monster. Indeed, I described this North Edge as an elephant not just for its size, but also for its weight, as a surprising 129.5 grams is nearly 40% heavier than the already hefty Duro. Such a weight increase to accommodate a simple solar quartz is very unusual. You know, that's mechanical watch weight territory for sure. And for all this added bulk, there are only 4 tiny screws holding the rear in place, which leaves me pretty skeptical about its aquatic capabilities, as does this ridiculous water pressure testing video released by North Edge themselves, where they claim to prove the watch's 300-meter water resistance rating, only to show the watch being tested up to just 2 bar, or a measly 20 meters. A watch is only considered lightly splash-proof at 3 bar, so this test to me seems super misleading and relies on you not understanding the machine's readout. I'd guess from the like to dislike ratio that many have indeed fallen for this fake test. Later, we'll be properly testing this one at 3 times that pressure rating. It's frustrating to see too, as outside of this watch is functionally quite impressive for only 40 quid. Indeed, sometimes you could even grab this model for just under that mark, so it's the most affordable option in this video. The case is definitely stainless steel with a fairly adept brushed finish, and the 90-click bezel is adequate too. Unlike the similarly priced Lorus watches at the start, this North Edge has a full set of applied markers and even a wave-adorned dial plucked from the Omega Seamaster. To my eyes, this isn't a true 3D textured dial, but the illusion is still quite convincing. It's got to be said that North Edge has some of the most Western-sounding branding on this list, if that floats your boat, and this model also comes with a plush silicone strap, even if the color is very childish. Yeah, it's kind of like baby's first Seamaster, albeit it doesn't actually have that much in common with the Omega outside of the dial texture. It's got an angular, blocky case instead, with that unusual battlement-like edge surrounding the bezel. If anything, it looks more like a Citizen Pro Master than an Omega, but the final result is still fairly unique. unique. Oh, and that baby would have to be pretty hench for this to look proportional too. At nearly 16mm thick, it's one of the chunkiest watches I've ever covered. Despite the feeble looking case back, it does have a crunchy but functional screw down crown, so perhaps it'll surprise us in the water test. The Triton is rocking a mineral crystal, as well as lume that handily beats the Duro, but does fall short of the last two watches. I'm torn on this one, as while it does beat the Duro in several areas, it is very clunky and not nearly as elegant as the Duro. It also has a little suspect workmanship. I mean, how a screwed-in caseback can be quite so tilted, I don't know. 3 stars out of 5, just because it's so cheap. Going up the price scale slightly, we have Parnis with the PA118. This one set me back about 76 quid, but it tends to vary from around £65 to £100, depending on discount codes and what options you select. I'll leave any discount codes I can find down below, by the way. But yeah, with this one, you can not only choose between a leather strap and a steel bracelet, but some listings also let you decide on either a Mingzhu 2813 or a Miyota 8218 automatic movement. Indeed, for not too much more than the Casio, you can actually get a fully mechanical watch, which is pretty cool. I went with the cheaper Mingzhu to keep the price low, but if you can stretch for the Miyota, it's probably the more reliable choice. The shape and size of this Parnis are pretty in line with the Casio, with a comparable 43.5mm diameter and a slightly longer 51.8mm look-to-look. As far as case finishing goes, there's also nothing to really separate the two, but after that, they start trading punches. The Parnis has a worse 90-click bezel action, but also has a more attractive ceramic insert. Instead of a sunburst, you instead get a micro-textured wave-like dial, which is quite impressively done, though the orange-adorned hour markers don't glow in the dark at all, and overall low light performance is slightly worse than the Duro. This model does boast a sapphire crystal, which is a step up in scratch resistance, but like some of the other models, things can get pretty hazy with no good anti-reflective coating. The 23mm strap included with this one is also quite the departure. It's a croc-style leather strap that actually has no holes. Indeed, it has a slightly fiddly clasp mechanism that, once set up, does allow you to pop the watch off and on without any extra damage to the strap. Basically, it's a deploying clasp, and you don't see those very often at this price. This Parnis may be considered a little better looking than the Duro, but it does pull heavily from a couple of Omega and Doxa models, so it isn't quite as fresh. It again advertises the flagship 200-meter rating, accompanied by a threaded crown and caseback, which is good. Overall, it's a reasonable choice. It does come in very rudimentary packaging, and I probably wouldn't pick it over the Duro, but it has some notable strengths that do at least make it stand out. I'll give this one 3 stars. Another watch that stands out with a comparable color scheme even is the Berny AM339M. This was one of the most highly recommended options on my YouTube community post, so I was really keen to take a look at it. And straight away, I think it's easy to tell why this one has received so much attention. There really is little else out there that looks akin to this, with its unusual, rounded, stencil-like detailing and very bright space-age accents. This is another of the compressor-style divers, but you'll be glad to know that this time the upper crown does fully work with no issues. Overall, the look is most similar to the Mido Multifort diver, but outside of the bezel, they have very little in common. Size-wise, it's a touch narrower than the Casio at around 41.5mm, but it is girthier at about 13.4. Within is the Miyota 8215 again, a common choice at the lower price brackets, and you can even view it through the exhibition rear if you really want to. You'll see again it's got a screwed case back, promising big water resistance, and it also promises a sapphire crystal, which I found to be true after some testing. Overall, the dial on this Berny is really unconventional. The markers appear punched through from the rear in a way, but are then filled with lume in the center, which gives them this odd quasi 3D look. It's a bit better than the Lorus watches, but it still looks cheap to me and almost slimy somehow, that central bit. What these markers do contribute to is the gorgeous rainbow of colors this watch exhibits in low light conditions. Performance-wise, this arguably eclipses the already performant ratio and obviously annihilates the Casio in the process. Another welcome addition is the strap, which sits perfectly flush to the case for a clean look and even has a nice steep taper. On wrist, the Berny feels a little smaller than the Duro despite the thickness. You can grab this one in 3 colors, by the way, that all will typically cost you more than the Duro if you're from the US. This black one was about £80 delivered, which isn't as cheap as a grey market Casio, and even with all the technical upgrades, I'm not sure this looks like a more expensive watch, nor is it particularly sexy. Still, I have to say it's a commendable original offering from a brand I've never tried before. 3.5 stars, maybe 4. A brand I have tried before and generally loved is Merkur. I rank this as my #1 AliExpress brand right now, and they have two options worth examining in this video. The first is essentially a reissue of a mid-century Chinese military diver's watch, offering faithful retro styling and a compact 39mm package. Well, the case is 38mm, the bezel overhangs a little, and you have that funny jutted out crown to accommodate that. And you know what? That's the main drawback with this watch. It's hand wound, and as with many hand wound watches, the crown is only push-pull, meaning you can't screw it in, so the water resistance is only 5 bar. We're still going to test it anyway, and maybe it'll perform well, or maybe it'll explode, I guess we'll see. The rest of this watch is better. It's got a nice case, a high-quality bracelet, and overall pretty attractive styling. It even comes fitted with an in-house mechanical movement. Up top, it's got a bidirectional friction-fit bezel like many Vostok watches, and a characterful domed mineral crystal with very steep edges. Luminescence is slightly better than the Duro 2, and you can go one better with the bezel-free version, whose green markers last substantially longer. When I first looked at this watch, it was around £100 before discount codes, though it's now ballooned up to about 120, which is definitely less tempting. I've since found this, what they're just calling the Skin Diver, which addresses both of these issues to some degree. This one has 10 bar water resistance, making it much more versatile, and is typically available for 10 to 20 quid less than the other diver, making it a more viable Duro alternative. It's got a silky smooth internal bezel, easily the slickest so far, as well as some great legibility and a super compact 38mm profile that wears smaller than most other options. Case finishing is great, the stock fabric strap has a polymer lining, a bit like a sailcloth strap, and overall this model I think just looks the part. On a better strap, I'm sure this thing would become a beauty. It's loosely inspired by the Longines Legend Diver from the looks of it, though virtually every area has seen substantial changes or additions. It's got these unusual oversized and stretched markers and numbers, which it's able to pull off by keeping all other text to an absolute minimum. Sadly, this is where I can't not bring up the only strange mistake with this watch. You'll see the word at the bottom center currently says anti-choc rather than anti-shock or the French anti-choc. The latter is what I'm assuming they were going for. So yeah, typos are not what you want to see. I've actually emailed Merkur to see if they'll fix this frustrating blunder at some point. Otherwise, I think this is a really good option. I'm giving it 4 stars. Without the mistake, it might be 4.5. Overall, it reminds me of a Vostok in more ways than one. And on that note, do you think I'd forget Vostok on a video like this? Well, last time I featured this Russian brand, it was right as Russian troops invaded Ukraine, so I got cancelled. But it looks like public opinion has relaxed a bit now, as this was by far and away the most suggested and requested alternative to the Casio Duro. More specifically, their Amphibia model. Now this watch has arguably an even more legendary reputation, with a history dating back to the Cold War era. Originally used by the Soviet Navy, the Amphibia has been the only continual budget rival the Duro has faced throughout its lifespan. That said, its approach is radically different. This watch isn't reserved or careful like the Duro. No, the Amphibia pushes the limits of wristwatch wackiness. It ships in an endless sea of dial variants, from minimalist and stylish to outlandish and eccentric. Even the case shapes and sizes vary significantly across the range. Now for this video, I went with this combination, which I think is among the coolest available right now, with a steampunk color scheme and wire-like horizontal lines that connect the opposing markers. This model uses Vostok's 120 case shape, which you'll find on a few other versions too. I think this one has by far the most attractive silhouette, as well as the neatest bezel, which combines perfectly with the more restrained dial options. For reference, this one is about 39.5mm wide, excluding the crown guards, and I've also tried the smaller 420 case, though I'd personally stick with this one if you can. Definitely feels better in the flesh. Another great thing with Vostok watches is they're almost endlessly moddable, and easily moddable too, as there are tons of interchangeable parts available online for cheap. Now the case finishing on this one, like most, is pretty plain, with a completely glossy exterior. Now that should suck, but I have to say, I quite like it. The edges and corners are still nice and sharp on this, which goes a long way, and I can't help but think that the simplistic case helps to balance out the more extravagant dial patterns Vostok is known for. Something else Vostok is known for is extreme water resistance, and I truly mean extreme. There are numerous online videos of these watches reaching absurd depths that no human would ever likely venture down to, not even scuba divers. Unless I've got a faulty one, this watch should waltz through my little water test at the end. It's more likely that you'll pop before this this watch does. In accordance with that, this Vostok has one of the beefiest casebacks you can get at this price, as well as a special wobbly or decoupling watch crown, which is apparently implemented to prevent damage to the stem. Buried within is, I believe, the automatic 2416 movement manufactured by Vostok themselves. This movement may lack in terms of beat rate and completely lacks hacking, but it is known to be really robust in all conditions, hence its use here. This particular one ships with a very pleasant silicone band, which is much better than the rubbish steel bracelet I had on my previous model, so I'd definitely go down that route if you can. You'll also notice that the crystal looks kind of funky compared to the others, and that's because it's acrylic. It's often used in real military watches like this for its impact resistance, as it doesn't shatter nearly as easily as the harder crystals, as well as the fact that it basically secures the watch more the deeper you go. It's like one of these weird phenomena. It also looks great bulging out of the bezel like this, though it will inevitably accrue a bunch of scratches. A tube of polywatch will probably be a best friend here. Now, in normal circumstances, the Vostok will be an easy recommendation for me. I like this watch much more than the Duro. I think it has a great deal more charm to it. However, since Russia's little holiday abroad, shall we say, and the following sanctions placed on Russia, these watches not only got harder to find, but also became much more expensive. A few years back, these were priced very similarly to the Casio, but nowadays are typically a good chunk more. Even so, still a 4.5-star watch, so they are the Duro's closest rivals. Let's see if any were telling porkies. Meet my new water pressure tester. I recently purchased this one directly from AliExpress, though it's a generic design you'll see resold all over the internet. I'll link the one I bought in the video description, alongside all the watches. This rig goes up to 6 bar, or technically 6 kilograms per square centimeter, which is roughly equivalent to 6 ATM or 60 meters of water resistance. This is as good as you can do without spending thousands on lab-grade electronic testers, so apologies that we can't reach those dizzying heights today. Still, 6 bar should confirm whether these watches can handle the sort of aquatic punishment that they're more likely to actually see on a regular basis. After pressurizing the chamber right to the max, I'll dunk each watch into the reservoir of distilled water. If the crystal explodes or pops out, this is an obvious fatality. Alternatively, if a stream of bubbles emerges from the watch case when I start releasing the pressure, that's also a sign that water has breached the case. Static bubbles forming around the bezel are, on the other hand, fairly normal. I've deliberately avoided fiddling with any of the case backs, and the crowns on all these watches are fully seated to try and keep this as fair as I can, and I filmed this whole segment before doing any of my testing, so I've got no idea what's going to happen. Let's dive in, eh? Okay, so I've since changed my mind. You know what, well, we've got all this mess set up, might as well throw in those Lorus watches and the Timex watch. But to kick things off, we'll start with Old Faithful here, the Casio Duro. Be pretty embarrassing if this one failed the test. You'll see there at the bottom, the pressure's starting to rise. Now, I wonder if one of these watches is really bad, if there's a chance that it might explode before it hits the water. By the end of this, maybe I won't have a skinny wrist anymore. There we go, we are at 6 bar. And now we are going to dunk it using this plunger in the center. And once submerged, I'm going to leave it for about 3 minutes. I've got a timer here. Here we go. Wow, that's tough. And as you can see, 0 signs of water ingress so far. And that's our 3 minutes. Now comes the second half of the test. I'm going to release the pressure using this notch at the top. Keep your eyes out for any stream of bubbles. Now, there is a couple of bubbles here on the right-hand side, and 1 or 2 from the center. The ones on the right side, at least, were just coming from the lug hole, so there must have been a gap underneath the spring bars. And there wasn't like a typical stream of bubbles like I've seen on the videos online. Now, I'll give this a pat down. The watch is still ticking away here, and I can't see any signs of water under the crystal or anything. So yeah, this one certainly looks like a pass at 6 bar, which is the least you'd expect for a 200 meter watch. Now, who is up next? Let's go in order of how I featured them, eh? Let's go with a couple of these Lorus watches. Wouldn't say I've got the highest hopes for this one. It is the cheapest in this video. So closing in on 60 seconds in, and no major causes for concern yet. Still looks pretty clear in there. And that's the 3 minutes up. And it's past those for sure. Definitely have quite a lot of bubbles this time. And there were several coming from beneath the bezel, but I did say to expect that at the start. The watch does still seem to be ticking. And just like with the Duro, no obvious signs of water ingress, which is pretty nice. Still more than adequate, I'd say. We'll test these other two Lorus watches as well, although I'm expecting much of the same. There we go, we're at 6 bar. Again, we've already got a couple of bubbles seeping from under the bezel, but nothing major. I think we may have a small bubble kind of near the ends of the lugs round here. And there we are, that's our 3 minutes. And we did have a couple of bubbles from a different location again here. I'm not going to lie, I am hoping for an explosion just for the clickbait. Once more, looks pretty good. Not sure why we had the bubbles on the back with that one, but wasn't anything major from the looks of it. Now this one's our first mechanical watch, and if water gets inside this one, it could really do some damage. And at the first dunk, no major signs of problems again. We do have a small bubble just at where the top of the crystal here meets the bezel. And there's our timer. A few bubbles there, maybe a little bit less than the last couple of watches. As you can see, we're still fully functional there, which is good. And we can actually look in the back of this one, and all seems okay. Still has the plastic sticker on the back. So the Lorus watches might look cheap, but they are at least functional. And one that wasn't so functional was this. So keen to see if this one can hold on. There we go, 6 bar is achieved. And we're in. With 30 seconds to go, it's all still looking pretty good. Although we do have a big bubble up here at the top. Not sure you can see that. We also have the ones on the lugs, as always, it seems. Oh, no, that was actually the least bubbles so far, for sure. Still ticking away there. No signs of water under that crystal. So yeah, it may have a dodgy bezel, but can certainly keep the water out, which is good. So it's all gone too smoothly so far, hasn't it? Let's try some of the more suspect, super cheap AliExpress options. I'm going to try the Keaso first, just because it was first in the video. All the way up to 3 bar now. Still looks pretty good. Not a clue what to expect with these. I mean, straight away we've got, well, now 2, but there was 3 bubbles instantly on the bezel, and I just saw one rising to the surface there. I've read online that you shouldn't really worry about that too much, but yeah, it's not the most confidence inspiring. There is actually one small bubble right near the case back. Definitely getting more and more nervous about these. I had a lot of bubbles there, as you can see, coming from that exact same spot on the bezel. And I have to say, we're still ticking away there, and things look pretty dry under the hood, so that can definitely still be called a pass, I think. Must have just been the way that the bezel insert was seated. No, pretty good for a really cheap watch. Here's a quick look inside the Keaso watch, by the way. And on the listing, they called this a Langda 507. And I thought this would be a Ronda 507 clone, but not quite. It actually looks like a Ronda 505. It says 505 in minute text down here. And then it actually has the Ronda branding on. Not sure if this is the real thing. I guess it could be a really good one-to-one copy where they've also copied the branding and everything. Now for an even cheaper watch that's only kept in place by 4 small screws. We'll also have a look at the movement inside this one after. I guess now we'll find out if there's a reason that they only went up to 3 bar in their testing. Already past 3 bar, albeit we haven't submerged it yet. There we go, that's the full 6 bar. And I definitely saw some bubbles from the back there, but nothing major. Now, I have to say, this one's doing better than I expected. That case back didn't fill me with confidence. Now, you can't see this quite on the camera, but we've got a rather big bubble forming on the back, right next to one of the screws. There you go, you can just see it there. And it survived through the 3 minutes. Again, quite a lot of bubbles from underneath the bezel insert, but nothing actually that would suggest a death. Now, would it pass 300 meters? Maybe that can be for a separate video. But as you can see, it's still chugging along and no obvious signs of ingress. I do wonder if I left this for several hours, if maybe it would start to seep in through the screws. Now, this is one of the oddest movements I've seen, I think. As I popped the back off, the battery came out with the top layer, and then we had this inverted circuit board kind of sitting on the top, which is then separate again from the quartz module inside. Now that there is Miyota 2036, which sounds just like a standard quartz. Next up, we have this Parnis. Whoa. Not good for the old tennis elbow, this. And for whatever reason, unlike the last few, there really is no bubbles on this one at all, which is, I guess, good. I only just noticed something. That watch has stopped. Now, some of that could be because the movement has just ran out of charge, effectively. Or maybe it has died. I can't believe I only just noticed that. Really makes me wonder what has gone on here. Yeah, definitely a few coming out of here on the left. Wow. Maybe we have our first fatality, and it wouldn't have been the watch I expected. Oh, there we go. No, it is going again now, so just seems that it ran out of charge either right before the test or during the test, because it is still chugging along there. And also no other signs of water on the inside of that watch, at least not on that side. So definitely got a bit of a scare there, but won't be as much of a scare as this next one's gonna be. Yeah, this watch is the first watch that we're actually going to be testing above its stated rating. 4 bar. And this is where this machine gets really tough to operate. And there we go, we're right up to the end of the scale. First impression's fairly good. Do have definitely a little selection of bubbles here at the top though. Mostly around the bezel, also one at the edge of the case back. I'm not gonna lie, I really thought this one was gonna pop, so I'm kind of disappointed in a way. And there we go. See if time's up for the Merkur. Oh yes, got a lot of bubbles. Oh no. Let's get that out of here real quick, because I feel like we've got our first failure. Now, I'm not sure if you saw that, but we sure did have a stream of bubbles coming from the case back. And that shows the importance of doing these tests properly. The watch itself is still going, so if there is some water in this watch, it's not made its way in too badly because it's still ticking. But I don't know, it looked like a stream to me. I'll get the back off this one in a moment and see if there's any signs of liquid on the inside. Yeah, I think we do have. Yeah, there's a slight bit of water down here. So it's actually not gone in as far as the movement from the looks of it. Not as much as I initially thought. So it has got a gasket on the outside on the case back. But then it's got this second red ring, which seems to have definitely done its job. Yeah, first time I've seen one quite like that before. And following that, I can't not test this next. This is the other Merkur dive watch, the skin diver they're calling it. And this one has an advertised 10 bar rating. And there is 6. There's less bubble buildup because it doesn't really have an external bezel. And that's all 3 minutes. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't nervous about this one again. And much better this time. So yeah, it really does look like this one has more water resistance, despite being in a similar case and from the same brand. Must have a slightly different layout inside. Next up, we've got another dual crown model, the Berny. At the halfway mark, still looking good. No bubbles really at all this time. There's our 3 minutes up. Another pass here. No problems whatsoever. No signs of moisture under the rear crystal either. Now we've got perhaps the two most direct competitors to the Duro coming up next. We'll start with this ratio. And there we go. And this one truly has 0 bubbles. Nothing. Not even any tiny ones around the bezel or anything. So the ratio made those 3 minutes look very easy. Yeah, overall still looks pristine, and yeah, I don't doubt its aquatic capabilities, even though it's got a pretty flat back. Another watch that surely won't have any problems with this is the old Vostok Amphibia. I mean, it has got pretty cool looking case back. Let's lob this one in, eh? And that's 6. Just like the last one, absolutely 0 bubbles with this one. But the movement has stopped, which is not what I was expecting. This should be the best on this list. What? That crown, I'm sure, was fully down. Well, maybe it's like that other one where just by chance it's run out of power while it's been under. I mean, there's no sign of bubbles or pops or anything. Here we go. A few bubbles, some big bubbles, but not like many of them. Oh, it briefly started going again. And obviously, because it's had some movement, perhaps that's just wound the rotor. I mean, what are the chances of that stopping? Yeah, it looks fine to me. Let me just check that crown. Yeah, the crown definitely is fully seated there. I'm going to give this a full wind up, you know, and then lob it back in and just double check that. And there is 6. Yeah, it's already doing better. It's already ticking along, still hasn't stopped. So yeah, it looks like that one was just unluckiness on my part, or stupidity for not winding them all up properly. Second time, absolutely no problems with the old Vostok. So there's a quick look and test of some viable Casio Duro alternatives. They're all, even the rubbish ones, linked in the video description, along with our sponsor IFL watches. And I'd love to hear which you think are the best options in the comments section. Or is the Duro still king? You'll have to let me know.